It's Wednesday. Let's chat. Hi, I'm Kannan Chandran, the publisher of stormasia.com, and this is our regular series of web chats, so Wednesday web chat. And I'm sure many of you, as we head into the year end, are thinking of that holiday you want to go out and enjoy yourselves on. And many of you would be looking at driving during that holiday period. So there's a lot of fun hitting the open road in a nice car, a rented car, or even your own car if you are driving up to Malaysia, for instance. Here's an opportunity for you to get away from Singapore's small spaces that you have to deal with and explore wider terrain. Now, of course, with that, there are challenges, and I think it's important for many who are going out on holiday to realize it's not always going to be a smooth ride. Sometimes it can be a bit dangerous, it can be a bit iffy in certain situations. So how do you sort of get your mind around it so that you have a good time but a safe time? Okay, just a few statistics that will sort of bring things into perspective, right? Of course, during the COVID years, we couldn't go anywhere, so there weren't many accidents involving Singaporeans. But prior to that, just in the 2 months from December 2017 and January 2018, that's a holiday period, 11 Singaporeans died in traffic accidents overseas. Now, when it comes to fatal accidents and serious injuries, in New Zealand, for instance, about 50 Singaporeans were involved in such crashes between 2012 and 2016. And most of these involved rental cars, of course, because you're going there, but you're not driving a friend's car. Now, many reasons are put forth. I mean, it could be because you're not familiar with the vehicle, you're not familiar with the terrain, you lose control, you don't know how to drive in certain conditions. It could be snow, it could be very wet, it could be windy. And of course, speeding is the other thing. And in Malaysia, that is one of the main factors for the road tragedies. So if you're planning your holiday, plan for these things as well. And to help you plan a bit better, I've got two panelists in today's discussion who are road warriors, who are experts in this space. Christopher Quek is the founder of Wheels for Fun, and they organize a whole bunch of driving adventures, driver training, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very useful experience. I've been on some of his sessions, good fun, but also a good learning experience. And we've got Vincent Lee. He's been an international driver trainer since 2000. He's been with a couple of car companies and has done driver training with them. Also a lot of excellent advice that he can offer. So now let me just get into the two panelists and ask them to explain what it is they do, what it is you've got to be mindful of when you're on holiday, and then we'll take the discussion from there. Let's start with you, Chris. Christopher Quek from Wheels for Fun.
Well, thanks a lot, Kannan. I basically have been doing driving holidays since the 80s and helping the different car brands to bring their customers up on driving holidays up to Malaysia mainly. I also enjoy driving overseas, so I've gone through quite a few experiences myself, but I also enjoyed the fact that I've seen some awesome places during my travels. Yeah, very thankful for the opportunity of being here to share.
Great. We'll get into some of those awesome places and some of those other issues in a while. Vincent, let's hear from you about yourself and driving.
Hi, everyone. Glad to have joined this web chat. Bit about myself. Yes, I've had more than 2 decades of experience with regards to driver training. And I think I started off from driver training first, and then I moved on to driving holidays. So as far as destinations are concerned, I think for me, it's not so much of the holiday destinations, but my experience will be much more on the racetracks. So I will probably have some favorite racetracks that I have ever visited. But it's not so much always about the speed, but it's really about honing the skills that you have to keep yourself safe. Human intervention is always number one.
Okay, great. So it's about having fun and being safe at the same time. And I think one of the things that maybe we should start off with is, what are the mistakes that you've spotted that people tend to make? They may not realize it and need to be guided as to how to improve or correct that aspect of driving. What are some of the mistakes that you've observed? Just jump in whenever you feel like it.
Okay, I think I would like to. I think one of the most common mistakes that we have, in fact, I wouldn't really call it a mistake, but something that we had probably learned and we need to relearn. Muscle memory, be it from our eyes, from our hands. How do we react in situations? What do we look out for? So usually in driver training sessions, what we are really focusing on is to let the participants relearn their muscle memory so that they can effectively guide themselves out of situations. We call these evasive maneuvers. The most natural instinct that everyone would have is just to slam on the brakes. But then again, having said that, not everybody would do that, knowing that that's the quickest way to bring a car down to a standstill. Some would just slam on the accelerator because the mind would have gone blank. And a lot of these things also come down to muscle memory. What is your immediate reaction? And in our sessions, what we try to do is try to make you relearn that, make you practice that, so that by the time you leave the sessions, you will have some inkling of what it takes to be a safer driver. That's one of the key mistakes that we notice, or I wouldn't call it a mistake, it's just a relearning session.
So does that apply to all ages, or are certain groups a bit more prone to
It actually
to
applies to
relearn
all
more?
ages, all gender. Yeah. I think
It's a very
it's
inclusive
something
thing.
about wanting to go there to learn something. If you're not going for a session to learn something, then I don't think you're going to come out with anything valuable. But before you go into a mode where you think that, I'm a fantastic driver, I've been driving for 20 years and no one has complained about my driving, always remember when you rent a car for a holiday, especially something that's not familiar to you, it might even be the same model. However, it's not maintained by the same mechanic, right? So things can go wrong in the car. Now, when you take it off the block at the rental company, you're not going to be able to assess it immediately. So it'll take a few kilometers for you to go and find out if everything is really, really fine. However, there's always one person, there's always the constant, and that's the driver yourself. So the car does certain things, but to avoid the situation, if the car can't avoid with the aids that they are now built with, then you got to come in. Yeah. So the only one that keeps the stallion tame is the rider.
Okay. The importance of knowing how well you can handle the car as well, right? So I find it's two aspects to it. One is with a car, it's a question of how much the car can go and push itself to keep you safe, and how much you can do for yourself to keep yourself and the occupant safe as well. Yeah, it's managing those two. Chris, how about yourself?
Well, I actually like to try and encourage people when they go on my trips is about the mindset they go in with the drive itself. It is to enjoy the journey itself rather than think of just racing to a point itself or pushing the car to the maximum. I do encourage also the other thing is to have a defensive mindset, because the biggest bugbear with an accident overseas is the time you waste at the police station waiting for the tow truck. To me, it's a real pain. I've handled enough of this in my past, and it's something I don't enjoy doing. As a service provider, I end up sometimes waiting for the tow truck itself, the person who crashes the car itself. But when I look at some of these people who get into the accident, it could have been avoided, because what happens is the idea is they feel that they have the right of way, they keep on their right of way instead of I find the beauty in some of the other countries. The people are generally give way first, no worries. Instead of I'm on the right of the way, you should not be making that U-turn, or you should not be turning right yet. I'll just keep going, and then of course the accident happened. So on that note, basically I've talked about trying to have a mindset of a defensive mode instead of feel that you can drive in an aggressive manner or in your normal manner. Personally, that to me, I myself have gone into a situation which I feel now is more important is a person should, when they go overseas to drive, be fresh and not tired. Okay, one of my biggest personal mistakes I've done is take a flight to Japan. On the flight itself, watch video. Arrive in the morning, pick up the car. I tell you, half the time you're struggling to keep awake. And I really kicked myself for doing that in the past. So if anything else on this program, I say whenever you fly, make sure you are fresh. So if it means you arrive early in the morning, don't plan to go for a long drive after that part. I think there is a habit for a lot of travelers because we are so intense in our work schedule. We try to cram a lot into a short holiday. So it means reach the destination, collect a car, and try and hit a 300-kilometer destination or 200-kilometer destination. I think that is a very bad mistake. There are some people who can do it, but it's not something I would recommend again. Even if you sleep well on the plane, if you can, the idea of taking a 4 or 5 hour drive after that is not something I would recommend.
I suppose with a long drive after a flight, you also need to plan it such that you have enough stops. If you have to take that long drive, plan it such that there are enough stops along the way to give you time to stretch, to have a coffee, to have a meal, sort of get into the right shape again before hitting the road. Yeah, you're right, because I think a lot of the people who tend to go on these long holidays bring their Singaporean mindset with them, which is something you should leave behind, right? There's aggressive driving that we have here. It's, when somebody indicates to speed up to block them, it's ridiculous behavior, but you'll realize it'll only get you into trouble once you're overseas.
That's right, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So, you're talking about accidents and stuff like that. I think one of the things that we should be mindful of is we should have the right insurance, travel insurance or whatever insurance, when you're driving. Are there any suggestions as to what a driver should have in mind? Is the travel insurance adequate? Should you take up more coverage from your car rental company?
Okay, I used to avoid taking the collision waiver clause in the insurance companies that offer it. But after a few years of having situations where when you return the car, little nicks and dents, they start claiming it from you. I decided, no, I'll just sign it inclusive so that I don't have to worry about that part. And because I do fair bit of winter driving, there will be certain signs where you do have little scrapes, that sort of thing. And I don't want to really have to have, at the end of a nice holiday, have to deal with the pain of fraudulent claims, that sort of thing. So I rather just include the collision waiver clause into my rentals. On the side of the rentals, I will share that sadly, not all car rental companies provide cars that are sometimes roadworthy. I have had a personal position where I was driving up to KL and then my car clutch broke. I stopped over in Malacca, picked up the rental car. And due to the timing and all that, I couldn't really be too fussy with the car. But I didn't like the fact that when I rented a car from a very reputable rental company, I saw that the tires were not exactly treaded sufficiently. But I still took the car because I thought, okay, it's just a 1.5 hour drive up to KL from there. Sadly, it's on the way back. it started raining heavily, and it was one of those experiences where the car starts aquaplaning, and it's a horrible feeling when you've got no tread, wet roads, and you aquaplane. Thankfully, nothing happened to me, but it made me very mindful next time when I rent car. Is of course check the tires. Most important is to me the tires, and makes me also feel that I prefer to get an all-wheel drive car than just a two-wheel drive car. That would be my key thing where if you're renting a car, check the tires, most important.
Is that the main thing that you should look out for? Are there other things? Yes, Vincent?
Yeah, I just want to add on what Chris mentioned just now about having tires with not much treads left, and then you're left to drive in the rain and all that. I mean, kudos to Chris with many years of driving experience. He's also definitely honed the skill of controlling that car in those kind of situations. This is where we feel that it's actually very necessary, at least for the knowledge and for the education for newer young drivers. Young as in, like I say, regardless of age, you may have got your license at 50, and then you're now starting to drive the car more actively. They need to understand and learn how to control the car with this kind of maneuvers, sensing it, and it comes through your steering wheel. It comes through your legs, which are connected to your pedals. It comes through your seat. So you feel it through your butt, you feel it through your legs, you feel it through your hands. And obviously what you see as well will also play a part. As in the skidding situation, when it's aquaplaning, you don't feel much on your feet, nor in your butt, because there's no more traction on the tires. But the minute visually you notice the TV screen has shifted, so it's everything of all your senses that's playing to make sure that you know how to get out of situations. Having been to other countries as well, I think the courteous people on the road are usually, from my experience, are more from the Western countries. We have to highlight, especially now that people are taking driving holidays, they want to go to Malaysia, they want to go to Thailand, maybe even further beyond that. They just got to be mindful of the way the drivers are on the roads. When I say that, I don't mean anything bad, because we ourselves in Singapore, we're not fantastic drivers. We come with a lot of bad habits, which we need to recognize that when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And just got to be very mindful that even with that rule, you always need to be perpetually in a defensive mode, because accidents can happen not necessarily in front of you, it can happen behind you. So I always have this advice that there's a real reason why you have rear view mirrors and wing mirrors. Personally, for me, I spend 80% of my visual on my mirrors. If the mirrors are to be taken over by driving aids, then the mirrors wouldn't have to be there. But until today, the mirrors are still there. Because what you can see right in front of you, you can have that captured in a photographic memory, but what's happening behind you, a speeding car, you can't see. That's why you have to glance on your rear view mirrors and your wing mirrors also, if the wing mirrors are there. So these kind of things, it happens in a split second, an accident. And if it's something you can avoid, we always say drive sensibly, drive within your lane. Make sure that you look out to your blind spot, other than your wing mirrors. Take a peek and make sure that the road is clear. Not assuming that as long as I turn on my signal for 20 seconds, somebody should have seen it. Who knows? The driver could be sleeping on the overtaking lane. And then he doesn't even sideswipe you, he just hits you straight from the back. And it could be avoidable if you're more defensive. And in terms of the drivers, that one rule I always have is the most important when you are setting off on the road. Today, we have things like tire pressure monitoring systems, but the tire pressure monitoring system do not pump the air for you. Yeah? So just make sure that you do check the tire pressures, not just before a trip, but make a regular check on the tire pressures so that you know that when you are moving on the vehicle, things are in order. Okay?
Yeah, no, very good advice. I suppose also looking the mirrors, it's also a good way to spot if there's a cop bearing down on you. The police are quite vigilant in many countries.
You read my mind.
Between the police, the speed cameras. I remember I was driving in Cambridge some years ago, and it was not a very long stretch of road, maybe about 50 miles or something, and there was something like 10 speed cameras, and the speed kept shifting all the time. So you get caught out so easily. And there were roadworks, so that didn't help. They have their own set of speed limits. So these are things which maybe your driver aids like Waze might be able to help you with. Besides telling you there are cops, it also tells you where the roadworks are, and you can at least take the precautionary moves to manage your drive a bit better. What do you guys do when you are planning for a holiday? How do you go about preparing for it?
First thing, if I can, as I try to book all-wheel drive, like I mentioned, because I feel generally a lot safer. I also have changed my mindset about always getting the biggest, most powerful car. Have you mentioned the speed trap cameras? It's now a real bugbear for me. And just personally, I was sharing it, the fact that after lockdown, when borders opened, I had the opportunity to go down to UK, and a friend recommended me just take a train from London to Glasgow or Edinburgh and pick up a car from there. 4 hours on the train, you're in a different city, and I took that advice. I stayed a night also in Glasgow. Had a great time because the friend I stayed with, the son was performing in a pub, and after 2.5 years of not listening to live music, I had a fantastic time in the pub itself. But what I wanted to share is about the drive itself. It was just a 3-day extended holiday where I just went up to Scotland, rented a car, and decided I want to see the West Coast, which I know from reading reviews and all that was awesome. And true enough, I had a beautiful drive because the roads were empty, long, hardly any traffic light. But I was always conscious about speed traps and cameras. So I was quite happy with the 1.5 liter car, although it was a SUV, but it was 2-wheel drive. But I told myself, I'm going to enjoy this drive. Of course, the fact that the wife is next to me also will take it easier. And so I didn't have to take magic pills like Vincent said. But I really enjoyed it because it gave me great feeling to be out again, away from a little island. But the journey itself was fun because we went to eat nice places. The great thing about nowadays, compared to the times when I started my business, is there's so much information, there's so much reviews online that you can pick up a lot of things as I'm going along, and I can change direction or route along the way. What happened is we basically just general idea. I was going to do a West Coast drive towards the Highlands, and instead of a direct drive up to the Highlands, and I measured the timing based on a GPS. They give you the various options, and it worked out very nicely. I had nice lunch breaks. I had nice coffee break areas and sort of thing. It became enjoyable. I didn't have to feel like I was going to rush to a place itself. It's something I cannot repeat again. Change the mindset of, instead of rushing to a destination, enjoy the drive. and I really enjoy that part.
I think if you are a bit more experienced in the field in terms of the kind of holidays that you take, you would be able to adopt that attitude a bit better. I think when you're new, first time traveling, first time driving, some people are extremely nervous and also can be quite dangerous on the road as a result. But others are, open road, let me go, I'm flying here, flying there. You pack too many things in. And then so you are really harassing yourself to get from point A to point B to point C and so on. It's rich to say, I mean, we used to do some of that when we were in the earlier days, but now it's, we like Victoria, the Great Ocean Road, especially, right? So our Great Ocean Road trips have grown from 3 days in the Great Ocean Road to 5, and now I think we're going to be spending more than a week just in the Great Ocean Road area. So we do a hub and spoke. We go somewhere, a nice place that, and it's always very good to have somebody plan that very well. So Susie, my wife, does a great job of that. She's been doing that all this while. So I leave it in her good hands. Also, then if anything goes wrong, it's not my fault. But it's never been nothing to fault so far. It's always been good. So it's important, I think, to be able to do that, because when you hub and spoke, it's less tiring, and you get the opportunity to also have that long, nice long drive to where you want to go. Vincent, how about yourself in terms of preparation for
Yeah,
trips?
I echo what you guys are saying in terms of having a more relaxed approach to the drive. Even if you have fixed stops in between, I would normally recommend that if you need to stop somewhere between those stops, please do. Yeah, because you may not be coming back the same place. It might be a scenic spot. And trust me, even if it's going to be another, if you can find a rest stop earlier for your kid, stop. Because you don't want the kid waiting to you for the next 10 minutes and then create all the stress in the car, or which then you may let your guard down. Speaking of stress, I normally would encourage that if there's nothing, no conversation or any happening within the car, it's good to turn on the radio, even if the kids are asleep. Because turning on the radio, please play something that do not put the driver to sleep. Okay, so if you're not at the classical, please don't play classical. The idea is to keep you as relaxed as possible. Back to that point again. Being relaxed actually creates a much wider field of vision for the driver, much wider. Because when you are totally focused and you're in attack mode, your vision comes all the way down to a tunnel. Hence, you are not able to even recognize what's in your peripheral. You may see something, but you can't recognize exactly what it is. Whereas if you're very relaxed, and let's say you're going up north into Malaysia, and suddenly you get a kapchai coming by, you know it is a kapchai because from your peripheral, because you're relaxed, you're able to recognize what is it. And this is so important to always be in the relaxed mode, because even in the field of martial arts, this is something that they always make sure that the mind is always very, very clear. If not, you don't know what's coming around you. So you have to be always relaxed to be able to have a defensive position. If not, it's just be focal on one point. And that's where actually the danger always happens. In all driving situations, we always say that when you come into a situation where it's an obstacle, in other words, some place you're not supposed to go to, which is the rear of a car or into a barrier, if you keep looking at it, that's where you will end up. Now, if you are very focused and you look at the barrier, trust me, you will end up in the barrier. But if you're relaxed and you look for the way out, you just recognize that the barrier is there and keep telling yourself, where's my next route? No, there's no exit over there. I look at the other side. Okay, there's an exit over there. You can only do this when you're relaxed, because you need to be in that state of mind. Then you can find the way out. Because if you keep looking at the obstacle, be it a car, be it a lamppost, that's where most situations end up. And hence the stories of accidents happening. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but what I'm saying is that having the knowledge that we're trying to share these tips actually will make you a much better driver and much safer driver when you're on the road. Not just for yourself, for the occupants, as well as for the pedestrians around you. You want to have a fun time in a holiday. Yeah, you don't want to go into a situation where you are perpetually tensed up. It's not a holiday. Yeah, it's not a holiday. It's tough enough that when you travel to countries where you drive on the other side of the road, it's already an adaptation within ourselves how we're gonna drive that way. Real life experience whilst we are driving in those kind of situations, it usually messes my mind up when I've got no car to follow in front and I'm exactly in a roundabout. At that moment, your mind can go blank. You don't know to check left or check right. You check both sides, but the fact is that you're not even sure which side to turn.
Yeah.
So sometimes I like to go a little bit slower and just follow a car, and then be more relaxed.
I have a sort of a guide that I use for driving. In general, it works on both sides of the road, regardless of which side of the road you're driving. I always take the sense that the driver is towards the center of the road. So if there's a road divider or a barrier, the driver is the one closest to that. So if you're driving on the left side, then you're on the seater on the right, so the barrier should be nearest you. So when you get to the roundabout, the roundabout itself should be towards you, nearest you when you're taking the roundabout. So I just apply that, so it doesn't matter whether I'm driving on the left side, unless of course it's right-hand drive in the left-hand situation, which is very rare, and in which case then your mind goes all over the place, working very hard. But essentially I just keep to that principle, driver towards the center of the road, or the center, and that way you get around. You don't have to think so hard about which way to go. It's worse when you come into a roundabout and there are no cars. So you don't have anybody to follow.
That's the kind of situation I'm talking about.
Yeah, right.
No, but that's a very good tip to apply to, especially if you're driving in a left-hand drive country. I actually like to share also about the fact that if you're driving overseas, be mindful. The road discipline there is actually generally very good. So this thing that we have in Singapore where you're driving at 80 or 90 and you can stay on the right lane, in Germany, if you do that on the left lane, you are really going to get screamed at and people get very angry. I find that the sad thing is, even just up to Malaysia itself, I see so many Singapore registered cars. I'm not saying Singapore drivers, I'm saying Singapore registered cars, who always like to stay on the right lane and only move to the left after they have a car following them for a while. I would say, be more graceful and be a bit like what Vincent says, be aware of the conditions around, be a bit more relaxed, but feel that be considerate to other people, because the extreme lanes are more for overtaking. If you're not overtaking, stay to the side.
I notice, I think in Europe, in some countries, I think in Holland, for instance, if you are driving too slow or keeping to the extreme lane, overtaking lane for too long at a constant speed, you can actually get fined for it, because you're not supposed. That lane is meant for overtaking, not for you to stay on. Yeah, so you could pick up a bit more of an expensive holiday if you keep to those habits. Yeah, so we've got some questions here, which is great. I was going to also just bring up a point that anybody who has questions or wants to ask something can do so. There's a question here about somebody who was caught with a flat tire in a rental car, and the phone signal was dodgy, and tried to get to the hotline of the car rental company, I guess, and didn't work. So they were saved by the kindness of a stranger, but the issue here was, now in a narrow country road, and you don't know for how long you're going to be there, is it safe to drive on very slowly with a flat tire? What's your recommendation?
I think generally it will not be safe unless you are running on run flat tires. Then there's a rule of traveling not more than 80 kilometers per hour for up to 80 kilometers. So it's very easy to remember. 80 kilometers per hour for not more than 80 kilometers. That should be suffice for you to find a spot to go and change your tires. However, if you have really no choice, but you have to change the tire, I would recommend that you not just pull to the side of the road, because it depends where your blown tire is. Do not change the tire such that you are between the standstill car, yourself, and the moving traffic. Never ever do that. Look for a little lane, whatever, and tuck it in so that you can change. And even if it means you may have to shred your tires slightly, it's really not reusable anyway. Do so, because your life is more important than to, just risk it over there. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think in this case, there are a lot of cars now which run flat or tire repair kits, right?
Yeah.
And if it's a really bad case, you won't have a spare tire to change as well sometimes. So.
But that's exactly, Kannan, that's exactly what is so relevant when we talk about taking a holiday overseas. It's not always your car. It could be a rental car. And questions like this, you don't even know whether the spare tire wheel is pumped up to a sufficient pressure. So naturally, as a driver, things like this should be in your mind, even if you're going on a holiday, because at the end of the day, you're behind the wheel looking after everybody in the car, and you need to make sure that when you arrive at the flying school, that the aircraft is not just properly prepared, but you are also, as the pilot, checking, making sure all your safety checks are there, that things are in order before I take off flight.
Yeah. There's another question here on if anybody's had any driving experience in Indonesia. And I've driven in Bali, so it's not quite the same. It's easy enough in Bali. But Jakarta or some of the other bigger cities, anybody dare to drive in those places?
Rather have a driver. I prefer have a driver in those places.
Yes, I think that would be the general advice. let the people who know how to negotiate those situations do it. I know in Indonesia it's very strange. When you're driving, the people come out of the side lanes, just merge, but I don't see any accidents taking place. If that happened here, the honking, the screaming, the banging, all that will take place, right? And there's some peculiarities, of course, in certain, like the hook junctions in Melbourne, where the tram lines run. You can't just take a right. You've got to go left to wait for the lights to change, and just as about to change, then you cut across. That's something to bear in mind. It took some time to get used to that. So that you've got to be mindful of the fact that in different parts of the world, they have different rules, and you have to adapt, right? So spend some time to understand what are the peculiarities of each place that you're going to. When we were in Portugal, we wanted to load our luggage in the back seat, but then the rental company said, no, it's against the law. You can't have anything loose like that, which could fly in an emergency situation. It come and hit you, it could fly out of the car, could cause more damage. So it had to be in the boot. So we didn't know that, so we were informed of that. So, things like that, it's useful to at least understand what you might be up against and what you need to bear in mind. And then process that, of course, before you hit the road. So, we've been talking about a lot of the things that could go wrong. But how about some of the nice things that have taken place on your driving trip? Which are some of your more memorable journeys? Vincent, how about yourself? Which were maybe your top 2 memorable road trips?
Memorable road trips. I remember a trip once when I was up in Germany, and it was starting to snow, and we were moving from Munich to Austria, and it already started to snow from Munich. So as we were driving the vehicle, we realized that the cars were actually on summer tires. And that, in fact, was a real life test of how do we get to a destination safely, even being equipped with not the right tools. So I think after that experience, and we talk about tires that have been shredded and deemed to be unusable, we do use these kind of situations to actually put trainee instructors in the car and see how they travel at speeds and drive within those limits. It's memorable for me because I enjoy driving the cars at limits. And it gives me a sense of calmness, knowing that you're in control of the vehicle. And that is always suddenly classical music playing in my head, although I can't stand classical, but it's a very peaceful moment that's beautiful. And I think another example of a beautiful moment would be obviously looking at the sunset. Yeah, climbing up to a mountain, just look at the sunset or the sunrise. So, yeah.
How would you know if you're on summer tires or winter tires?
If it was a rental car, it is rental company should have insured, right? But there's usually a marking at the sidewall. There's a marking on the sidewall. And even if you don't look at the sidewall, if you look at the contact patch, it's usually very different. If you want to know for say a Singaporean, if you're on winter tires, trust me, you look at the treads, they will look totally different from what you're driving today. It's a lot more luts in it.
Yeah.
So it can dig into the what do you call the snow?
The snow.
The top snow. So it's visually different.
Okay.
Gives you a bit better grip, but doesn't mean it gives you the same amount of grip as if you were driving on a summer tire. So you still have to take it a bit slower.
Okay. Good to know. Chris, how about yourself? Your memorable trips?
Oh, so much. There have been a lot, and like I hear what Vincent says, especially about the driving, the zone, getting into the zone, and I've had the opportunity of enjoying a lot of those. One of my best destinations I highly recommend to anybody who wants to go for a scenic drive is Norway, and I got to, by speaking to locals, they recommended me to go to Senja. I was there to watch the Northern Lights, and they said, go and visit Senja, which is a little island connected to the mainland by a bridge. And when I went there, I was awesome because you have the fjords on one side and the sea on the other side, and sometimes you even get to see the whales reaching that sort of thing. That was one place, but to me, most recently, I had a chance to invite some of my army mates to go for a drive in Sweden, from Denmark to Sweden, and the 6 of us, we took 2 cars. And interesting, when they got to the destination, they were sharing about the fact that they've never driven in winter conditions. And to them, this was their highlight. They really enjoyed it. But the fact that because we kept to a decent pace instead of trying to be rushing and racing, although we were covering good distances, we also took the effort to also switch drivers at times. To me, those are the pleasures I get nowadays, helping other people also have a good time. Something I enjoyed in my Wheels for Fun business was helping people to drive up Malaysia. And one of the most common thing I would tell them during my drives is, you can, the roads are long and straight and open, but always remember before the bend ease off. I think one of the things that we talked about earlier was about this accident. I think a lot of the accidents happen because some of these cars go into the corners a bit too fast, and then they sometimes end up braking at the point itself, and incidents happen. But on the note of driving pleasure, sorry, just too many for me to think about.
But that's good fun. But yeah, it's important to bear in mind that when you're driving at speed, there's sometimes speeds you're not familiar with, and your brain is sometimes not used to adjusting to corners, right? So that's why even in F1 they have markers to tell you when to start braking before a corner, because you're just going too fast for your brain to handle it. And worse still if you're not experienced with it. So the other thing, of course, I find is in today's cars is a lot of connected appliances. Your smartphones in there is on the screen, and I find that could be a major distraction for a lot of people. Especially when you're traveling, you're trying to do something, you're poking at a screen. Just avoid that in an unfamiliar space, or actually on any space. Try and avoid that. Wait for your car to stop before you do those sort of things, like answering a call or trying to look at what messages popped up, or trying to change the mode of your driving and stuff like that. So that part of things need to be managed. Of course, if you're traveling with family, I know if a kid starts screaming, you're going to start looking, and I suppose in that way you got to be a bit more focused about the road and learn to take some of those noises on board, right? For me, I had a peculiar experience which will always stay with me. We were test driving in Germany on the Autobahn, no speed limits back then. It was a Volkswagen Phaeton which was being launched, and we had just finished lunch. This was the last day. We were heading back, and we had to drive the car to the airport and then fly back. So there was a chance, no speed limit, so I was pushing the car, right? So we pushed it to 270, 280, 290. I want to see how stable it was at 300. It was very stable. And then suddenly I saw something in the distance coming towards me. So I hit the brake and stopped. It stopped nicely, and then these 3 horses galloped past me. They had broken away from their trailer, and they were running 3 horsepower, heading in the wrong direction. So I don't know what happened to them, how they would have been caught, because they looked a bit frenzied, and they were just sort of charging away. I don't know whether it was because they were free of the carriage, or that they were looking at all these strange machines coming at them. But that was quite an experience. But looking ahead, Vincent, as you were talking about, is important. You got to look ahead and see what's happening.
I'm so glad you did not pick up 3 horsepower more.
No, yes. That would have been, I don't know, 3 horsepower at that speed would not have been a pleasant experience. We might have been stabled perpetually. Any last words from Vincent and Christopher regarding traveling and driving on your journeys?
It's a driving holiday. At the very bare minimum, I think you still need to plan where you want to end up. But it being a holiday, don't plan too much. Yeah? Give yourself a lot of allowance for you to smell the roses along the way and enjoy that distance. It's not about covering as much road as possible, but really enjoying all those moments. Because once you're past that junction, they will just be memories that you will treasure. So that whole journey, when you encapsulate that whole journey at the end of the day, it's going to be a memorable holiday for you.
So pack the right clothes, but don't pack it into your itinerary, right? Don't pack your itinerary too tightly. Yeah. Okay. Chris?
Yeah, actually, this group that I just recently traveled with, we had a very good policy where we were going to spend so much time in Norway and Sweden, but we weren't going to make bookings for all the places we were going to stay, because sometimes we wanted the flexibility to stay on another night at certain places we found that were very beautiful. To me, having that ability to just relax a bit more and let go and enjoy the adventure of sometimes, some flexibility in terms of itinerary, rather than must reach this destination by this time, that sort of thing. The group really enjoyed it in terms of the pace was relaxed, the scenery. We really have got to enjoy the scenery And at times where we felt that the city or the town was interesting, we spend a bit more time, go for a little walking tour, and hear the stories about the place itself instead of just drive. I can agree with Vincent. Just chill, enjoy the experience rather than think of trying to do too many things in one trip itself.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it's all about enjoying the experience, right? You don't want to be so driven to the point you are rushing through everything and not having a good time. You want a holiday, not a horror day as well, right? So thanks to Vincent and Christopher for the advice and all the experiences that you shared. I'm sure there are loads more.
Thanks for having us on board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if for everybody out there, thanks for your questions and observations. And also, if you're going on holiday, have a good time. All right? Take care. Thanks.